Welcome to Art Unscripted, where we explore the world of art through conversations with people shaping how we see, experience, and live with art. I'm Gayatri Singh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always delighted to talk about my journey. If it can inspire more people, why not?
My guest today is a visionary whose work has redefined how India experiences art, not just in private collections, but in the very space where we gather, stay, and linger. Priya Paul, a hotelier, collector, and the chairperson of the Apeejay Surrendra Park Hotels, is one of those rare forces who blends business with cultural stewardship. Under her leadership, the Park Hotels became synonymous with art-infused hospitality. But beyond boardrooms, her personal collection spans contemporary art, vintage graphics and posters, and objects pulsing with cultural memory. A 𝗙𝙁 recipient, she shaped industries while staying fiercely private, making this conversation all the more special. So thank you so much for your time and your precious time. And I have for a long time admired, the way that you've brought art into your home and made it a very integral part of everyday living. And I think now I get to see some of your collection, but I think there's so much. It's such a diverse collection, from modern to contemporary to Air India posters, vintage graphics, and objects that have a huge cultural memory. So it's really a pleasure, and we're delighted to be here. And we really wanted you to share your journey so that young collectors kind of could look at art, and get a very informed perspective.
Thank you, Gayatri. It's really a pleasure to do this, and I'm always delighted to talk about my journey. If it can inspire more people, why not? And of course, what you're seeing is an amalgamation of maybe 40 years of collecting, and from different places, and maybe we'll have a little walk through. And so I'd love to talk to you about it.
And when did you see that early curiosity for collecting?
So I think it was not collecting, it was actually living in Calcutta and living in a place such as that, which is in the 70s. So 70s, there were a lot of other issues happening in Calcutta, and it was not the richest of places to live in terms of economic prosperity, but it was very rich in culture and art and theatre and all the creative pursuits, and that's really what Bengal is known for. And we lived there. So whether it was my sister, myself, or my mother and father also, we were exposed to art exhibitions. They were actually art exhibitions. We studied fine arts and actually had our own exhibition, obviously for friends and family. But everywhere you went, you had people creating art, right? And let's face it, this was all before social media and things like that. You actually physically went and saw spaces and discovered spaces, and there were spaces for that. My father and then later my mother, they collected art for the hotel. So I remember going to art shows with my dad, and those were the days you'd go and buy 10 works, and the poor artists would actually be very happy to have it in the collection, and they were still in the hotel's art collection, right? So I know those early days from then. And but that was a milieu of Calcutta. So I think it was not necessarily being born into an industrial family or any other family. I think in Calcutta you were exposed to art at all times, including music and things like that.
True. And when did you feel there was that point where you kind of said that rather than just looking at art, I want to live with art? Was there a point in your life where you felt that?
I don't know if there was a point. I think it happened gradually, but I certainly remember one of the two interesting pieces that I bought, and both were actually when my parents moved to Delhi. By that time I'd gone to college in the US, and I came back in 86 they moved here, 88 I moved back. But I do remember two distinct pieces that I bought. One was a Ravi Verma print for like maybe 300-400 rupees, and the other was a poster done by 𝗪𝗓𝗓 for his exhibition at Triveni. I was not really interested in the art rest of it because it was a big show and it was expensive, and you know I was not looking at that. But he had done a poster which I still have after it's somewhere in the archives, which he had hand colored and done for the exhibition. So I told my dad, I want that. And I think it was quite expensive. It was like some 3,000 rupees in those days. So my father had to buy it for me because I didn't have that money. But the 𝗷𝙗𝙀 I bought, and that 𝗷𝙗𝙀 was another journey of collecting, which was popular imagery, ephemera, the travel posters, film posters, so many of those other things which people don't see. And
I saw them in the, I saw your Air India posters in...
Artix had done
Artix,
I'd done a little show there. So, and that's why maybe I was also drawn to the 𝗪𝚢 𝗪𝚢 poster, because I like these works on paper which maybe don't exist after a while, you know. So that was my, so I really started collecting works on paper at that time. Okay.
So, I mean, I think art is a reflection of us quite often. So, have you seen how your collection has changed over time? What you pick, what talks to you? Or
so, you know, Gayatri, because I collect in so many different areas, it'll be popular imagery, advertising, calendars, kind of objects for myself. Then there is contemporary art, and that's something that I have my own collection as we have a corporate collection, and that's also goes, you know, that's in the hotels and the offices, and very often, you know, obviously for the hotels you're looking for work that resonates with the local, the location, but also then it has to tell a story within a hotel. That being said, over time we have a lot of works in storage, so as we go into other hotels, I'm trying to look at the collection to see what we can use from our archives, and rather than buy more. You know, there's a lot of stuff in storage now, so now the time has come to get into this collection which is documented, etc., and to see how we can place it in our upcoming hotels. So I'm not collecting, even though we're building 5 hotels, right now I'm not collecting for the hotels because of course the design work has to complete. I want to look at the archives and then fill in where we need. Obviously if it requires a big commission, that has to be done. Right? But that has to be site specific once all the design parameters are decided and things like that. So I'm collecting a little less, but I'm watching and seeing a lot. And there's some interesting, I think, new artists that have come up, and I think the younger artists are emerging. I think we're at that stage now because we know the old established, and even the young contemporary artists that one collected in the 2000s are now the established artists. So I think now the next crop of people are coming up, and you know, I think the COVID years have been hard, but now I feel that there's just better work coming out now.
No, in fact, the COVID years were the hardest for some of these emerging artists, and that's when we started our grant, and because a lot of really, really good artists, one, of course, they didn't know how to feed themselves, but the second was thinking of taking up jobs, doing anything, and then leaving that practice.
No, because also there was no platform, galleries closed, exhibitions were not happening. Of course, a lot of it went online, but it's very difficult for a young artist to break in that online unless they have a very competitive price. So that is what it is.
Yeah, and then today the markets, you know, everyone's looking at emerging artists more seriously, which wasn't there before. So I think that's a great, you know, future for them. So a little bit about your Air India posters, for instance. What do you do those?
So it's not just Air India posters, they're actually travel posters, and there's a whole body of work which is travel to India posters. So a lot of them came out by the tourism, I guess, ministry or railways from the 20s and 30s onwards, 1920s, 1930s. So there's a whole lot of, I think first railways came into India, and there was a lot of poster work going up to encourage people to travel in different parts of the world. And then there were kind of like Visit India posters, which were all over the world. So it could be Air France doing it, or it could be a BOAC, the erstwhile BOAC, Pan Am. So the travel poster genre is huge in the West, and if you go online, they're huge. The auction houses just devoted to that. So my interest was piqued first by then, because I'm interested in how India is seen in the world. So before I even started correcting these See India and Travel India and Visit India posters, I was interested in works on paper, let's say from the 1850s onwards. So if you go back, there were lithographs, there were woodcuts, Kali Ghats. I was interested in popular imagery, and I am interested in, that's one of the collections that I enjoy most. And I was looking at how India was seen in the world and India was represented. So it was also through photography, through matchbox labels. I have many random things, okay. So and it also came from my interest first in that first Ravi-Varma, because suddenly I saw this Ravi-Varma and I'd never seen it. I grew up in Calcutta, not familiar with Ravi-Varma. Which museum would I have gone to? But I came back and I was in one of these Mehrauli antique stores, which I also love going to. And I said, oh my God, I said, what is this thing? Who is this person? So I bought that, and then I started seeing the images. And obviously in Delhi you see it, you could travel to Rajasthan, you travel to finally Kerala, and you see there was a lot of the Ravi-Varma prints in Rajasthan in those days. And I started seeing that image even before I actually saw one of the oil paintings, because that took much more later. You saw it on postcards, you saw it on this thing. It was influencing contemporary art in a strange sort of way, or some art that you would see in the National Museum, National Gallery. So I was very interested to see how this image had percolated through so many mediums, and it was then being used for advertising, even a godlike image used to advertise bidis or chemicals or textile labels or things like that. So that is where my collection started. So it's all works on paper, very fragile. And I could see...
and many posters weren't archival either, right?
No, and I even posters, even small things, you could see that they were just being thrown away. So I would be buying, I'd buy 1,000 labels, or I'd buy 100 posters at a time, because they were being sold as kabar and thrown away, or whatever, throwaway prices. And that's where my collection of works on paper started. Then I went into the travel posters and other things and everything, and there's a very... and what did I buy? Things that are 50 rupees, 100 rupees, okay, maybe now the price would be 1,000 rupees. So I think all these things, they're all more than 100 years old now.
Yeah, and some of the Air India posters are really clever.
Yeah, so a lot of those are much later, because they were in the 50s and 60s, etc. But the Visit India posters are earlier, much earlier.
Wow.
And that's like I would say mid 1900s. But I think when you're looking at young collectors, I mean, somebody might want to collect postcards. I mean, they tell a fascinating history. Postcards barely get made anymore, but you could do a collection of 12 of them, and it tells a story.
True,
right?
True.
So
you can start anywhere.
You don't have to, buy a massive big name artist to be a collector. Okay, so I feel that I'm a collector of many different types. I mean, you could collect ceramics, you could collect perfume bottles.
Yeah.
Okay, so and I've done all those. So.
Yeah. So how do you, display and live with your work? I mean, you have a certain collection here, but do you rotate? Are they tucked away and then you rediscover them suddenly?
Yeah, there's always that. And I think one of the things is you can only live with so much. And of course, I'm already a bit cluttered, but you have to edit. And I think what I'm doing now is when I add something, I try and just put something into storage. And also some goes directly into storage if they're larger works, because if I don't have space for it. And as I said, I collect for myself and I collect for the group collection. So a lot of that will go into archives. And of course, if you find some exceptionally nice piece, it's better to buy it and then keep it in the archives. As I mentioned, I'm doing 5 different hotels, but they're all really 3 years away from where the artwork should be. But this is the time to see and to decide, okay, fine, I want to work with this person, or this thing, or that would be interesting for that story. And then you build that in as a commission or something else in that story. I don't really feel, I did see some artwork which I liked, but it was a limited edition. So I said I must get that for that hotel, because I was looking for artists from that area. So, sometimes you make that decision, especially if it's not a huge commitment. And it was a young artist. So I said, let me get that. And but only when you know sometimes those big spaces in a hotel, then you can commission works for that. So it's a combination. It goes in the archives. My popular imagery collection is mostly archived and in storage. I don't exhibit so many pieces of it because it's a very particular type of thing, but it's open to scholars. It's digitized by the Heidelberg University, so it's available online across the world, and it's available for anybody who wants to study or even borrow pieces for their shows.
Oh wow, lovely.
Yeah.
It's a great thing for young students to come and see, no?
So from time to time I have them coming. They do archiving projects, documentation projects, and I have a person who manages the collection because it needs to be digitized.
So is there any particular piece in your collection which has an interesting backstory that you'd be happy to share?
Well, I think everything has a story, right? And especially when you put it up, then you're thinking of that story. So let's say in this room I have a Raghu Rai, which I love, and which is really a classic image of his, with Indira Gandhi sitting down and her whole council of ministers just hanging on to every word, all standing up. So I love that. Maybe because I admire the courage she had, and maybe I don't think I do that to my managers though. But it's a very powerful image. And then I have simple things like just some nice ceramics, which I've lately been just getting smaller pieces which I can just keep on my table. And then I have a very interesting, just to give you completely a different direction, I have one of Subodh Gupta's first sculptures ever, which was in his National Museum, National NGMA show, and it was bought literally because they were doing some fundraiser, and Subodh was not even known, but it's a collection of three, a helmet, a gun, and a bottle of alcohol done in cast iron, and it speaks of violence, and it was very much of that time period. It was collected in the late 90s, I think. And along with that, I have a Burmese lacquer tray, in black Burmese lacquer tray, which has Gandhiji on it, which was obviously made in Burma, probably in the 30s or 40s, and there was a lot of trade between India and Burma, and the Chettiar community was based there. So obviously somebody commissioned this, or it was done for the Indian market, but again it shows India's influence in the world and how global we were.
So that's, I can see that theme is really,
it's very much
really
in
important to you.
Trade. So I really looked at trade, because being in a business person, I said, oh my God, here you have matchboxes being made in Germany and Sweden and in Japan with Indian themes on it. I'll show you some of those later.
So when it comes, I think what's really come out is the park hotels. Art is a very important aspect of the hotel, and how did you kind of because if you look at a lot of hotels, the art is an afterthought, and here it is integral, it is saying something.
Yeah.
How did that idea evolve?
So when I first started working, after the first couple of years, and when I started, I would say, managing the whole portfolio myself, I looked at the art, and of course I had this background of art, and I started the first renovation project which my father had started, and then I took it over, was in Calcutta.
The Park Hotel in
the
Calcutta,
Park in Calcutta, which was our first hotel, started in 1967, and this was, now we're talking at 1992, 91, 92. So that time, hotels, not just in India, particularly in India, but all over the world, in the rooms, they always had some photocopied art and nothing very original or something. Maybe very few hotels, really high-end classic hotels in Europe might have had original art. If that was part of their story. So I decided that I must have, no matter how expensive it is or cheap, like 500 rupees, 1000 rupees in those days, I must have original art in each room. So I worked a lot with Priya of Gallery 88 and commissioned art for the public spaces, and also then bought a lot of young artists' work and emerging artists' work for the rooms. A lot of it prints and lithographs and things like that, because those were cost effective, but they were original. right? And people miss that. It doesn't have to be a canvas for it to be in a room or a public space. So I had no issue with putting a nicely framed real serigraph or print or lithograph or whatever, depending on the space. And then we also commissioned younger artists to do original works, and as the budgets change. And then, you know, with Supriya for the we created site specific works by 𝗵𝗂𝗪 Bhattacharya, 𝗫𝗪𝗪 Dattare, all those people who were masters at that time. But in the lobby I wanted some like big Bengali names, so it had to have a connection. I was not going to put Bengali art in necessarily in Delhi. Okay, so that was a story, and then that's what I started building out in Visakhapatnam, Delhi, and as we grow out in the hotels. So it's important, obviously in a bedroom when you have the art, of course it has to go with the scheme and theme, but it also should stand up as a nice work. So I select each work.
That's amazing.
Some from our collection, some from the artist directly.
And have you ever encountered like a guest walking in, or stories about a guest walking in and getting moved by the art?
I don't hear it necessarily directly, but I do hear from my team, and people appreciate and enjoy it. And what you've marked out is that people recognize our hotel for the artistic expression on the walls as well as sculptures. I think our customers understand that and appreciate it. Okay, so I hear that sometimes when I meet, oh, we love this and how nice, and sometimes it just creates a nice feeling. Like say, even in Calcutta, we have a pre-function area, and where I've hung it's hung as an art gallery. So there are like about 30 works there. So it's hung like that. It's a large space, and it's some are expensive works and some are not, but whatever, they are all there. I have everything from Satyajit Ray posters to Bose Krishnamachari, to like, so there are about 30 works there, just to create, because Calcutta is that city of art.
So then, would you assume that a space like a hotel can be a really effective, quiet advocate of culture and collecting?
Of course, I think it's we've started doing it very early in the 90s, but I think a lot of hotels now have art programs and things like that. Some are a little erratic, some continue for generations, and I think that's important. And also, we've played host to art exhibitions, to art events, some, in the early days in the Park Delhi, one of the people that I was very fond of and who passed away last year, 𝗵𝗂𝗪. So with Siddharth and his wife Meena, we said, okay, fine, let's do something called we did something called the Midnight Art Bazaar. And basically it was 3 days and nights, but really evenings, where we just had art that was below 1 lakh. And really created this platform. They were young artists, but they were lithographs. They were old masters in one room. Because in those days, this was like, I think in the, I would say late 90s. So to create this whole thing, because that whole art ecosystem.
And that whole midnight is a great time for people to have
free
time.
After 8 o'clock, and we didn't want to have this exclusive art opening kind of thing, and we call it an art bazaar. So basically you had that, and kind of what other people are doing now. And the thing is, how do you demystify, and how do you then bring a younger artist, or and there are people doing this, like Imagine Art Fest is going on, Artix is going on. So it's the idea to make it a little more democratic and open, so that people can, those barriers about art collecting, it's not something that is only in drawing rooms, right?
Yes.
So I think that way of taking art out, making it more democratic, making the conversations about it, I think that's something very
and then it
important.
becomes more a part of everyone's life, because they start getting used to seeing it. Then if it's not there, then they miss it.
No, and also remember, in our country, going to an art gallery, even going to a public museum, it's very difficult to get people to come for shows.
Very difficult.
I mean, you're in the business, but even the National Museum of NGMA, there'll be some people randomly going through, okay, fine, now there's a little more engagement, and the museums also have conversation, you can have a guided tour, things like that. But how do people understand what Amrita Sehgal is and who she is? Okay, even if you go to the NGMA, it's a fabulous collection. So that outreach and engagement has begun to happen, but the museums are empty.
Yes.
So the kids go because the kids are taken by from school.
Teachers,
but
yeah.
after they become teenagers, how do you encourage museum going? How do people understand that these things need to
We
be...
don't have that culture
And
yet.
how do,
where
you know,
spend
as the
Sunday-
antiquities need to be preserved, the monuments need to be preserved, you know, our culture and heritage of all types.
So there's a study by the hospitality design that guests are willing to pay 15 to 30% more if a hotel has a unique, engaging art experience. And also there's more brand loyalty when there is that. Do you agree with that study?
I mean, I don't know the study at all, and I'm hoping it's true over time. It's not that you immediately put an art collection and your whole occupancy and rates go up by 15%, but for us, it's part of our branding. So when I started in '92, trying to rebrand and reposition the hotels, I was very clear that I wanted the hotels to be rooted in Indian contemporary culture and expressed through art, design, food, fun, music, nightlife. So that's what the Park Hotels stand for, and that's the niche that we have developed over since 1992.
Yes, completely. I mean, that's...
And I think that if I look at it as a branding exercise for us, and for us, it is our culture, it's our ethos, and probably that's what people come back to us. But it's, you know, the art is just one part of it. It's also the design and which stands out, and of course the other activities that we do around it.
So what role does nostalgia, I mean, I think you've said that a lot in our conversation to you, but what role does nostalgia play in what you are drawn to?
I don't know if it's nostalgia. As I started, for me it was more a kind of a process of discovery, because I said, I didn't know who Ravi Verma was. Okay, I didn't study art history in Calcutta. I did contemporary art or whatever. There were exhibitions. Of course, there would be some, but so for me, it was a discovery about, you know, who is the artist and what happened. Then this whole question of trade, and I read a lot about those exchanges, and so I have a interest in that history and what was happening with the trade, what was happening with people moving, and you know, then subsequently there have been so many, particularly in the last 15 or 20 years, so many histories that have been written, whether it's a Manu Pillai or a William Dalrymple, that are re-exploring the linkages of India and the world. So I think that for me is a very interesting, so I'm always learning. So I don't know, it's nostalgia, it's not nostalgia.
It's actually
it's discovery and it's our history.
It's our history. So I would say if I had to ask you about modern, contemporary, old, ancient craft, is there a preference? It would be, I guess.
So I do a lot of craft for the hotels. I like craft for myself. I collect antiquities for myself. Then all the other works, the works on print are really from 1950-ish to, you know, up to recent times, all mediums. I don't collect so many of the moderns, so it's more contemporary. It's not progressive, I'm not into that.
So it's literally like craft, old vintage posters, textiles, and then contemporary.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, I'm going to go to my favorite topic, emerging art.
Okay.
You've been consistently, you know, a supporter of emerging art, especially for your hotels and with commissions, with collaborations. I think what excites you most about emerging art practices today? And I think I'm asking this question because it's something that I want young collectors to also kind of think and consider.
I'm seeing a lot more, and I see a lot more experimentation in mediums. I'm seeing a lot of people working with textiles, whether integrating craft as well as their new practices or things like that. I think the revival of craft and proper painting by many people who are doing it, whether they're doing pitchwise or kalamkari on silk or paper. Those things are interesting because I think it also not just preserves the craft, but also takes it forward, and I think that's important. You know, we just did this hotel in Patiala, so the design team really wanted to recreate a lot of these line paintings. It was because in those days also the Rajasthani painters were working in Patiala. But we actually took it forward and we said, we're not going to cover every surface with embellishment, let us take motifs and take it out. So it was reinvented in a sense, but still using the traditional craft,
yeah.
and but taking motifs from the palace, taking something else, making them larger in scale, smaller in scale,
More contemporary,
putting them on
maybe.
wallpapers, putting them somewhere else. So it was not just replicating what was done 250 years old, which is fine, but not necessarily what, you can't be static with these. So I think, so even craft like that or painting has to move forward. And the artists also then need to see that there is a future in it, right? If you're going to do exactly what your great-grandfather did, if you're a creative person, it's boring.
No,
Right.
in fact, we're doing a show in January which is contemporary miniatures, and there are a lot of artists who are like taking, miniatures, forward.
Yeah, and that's
to
been
something
happening.
that's more.
But I'm glad you're doing that, because to see a show together like that, I mean, I've seen other shows in the past, but not for some time.
I'm seeing some of the artists. It's amazing.
No, it's lovely.
amazing.
I think that's a very nice field.
So when you're looking at emerging artists, what is it that you look at? The story, the innovation in terms of mediums?
See, it depends on what I'm looking for and when I'm seeing it. Sometimes I feel, I always like encouraging them. So if I go to a show, then I end up buying, which is not always necessarily good. Because sometimes if you just buy one random work of a artist, it doesn't build a story. So if I'm doing it, for me, I look at the emerging artists very often for people who will do work for me for our hotel rooms.
Hotels, yeah. So
For the room especially. So
how
then
it
if I
links with
see it, and then if it links with the story, then I might say, okay, fine, now do me 50 works. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, when you do works for a room, when you're buying for hotel, there's a cost of the work, there's a cost of framing, and then putting up. So it has to work for the budget of that hotel. When you're doing public spaces, you're more generous with the budget, but when you're doing a hotel room, there's a certain fixed cost that you have to do it in. But for me, so what I do and why we also have stores is very often, if I bought those original works, I can always reuse them in another hotel. So after 7 to 10 years, we change the room. So either I might reuse the artwork in that hotel because it's part of that story, or I might take it to another hotel, or it goes into storage for something else.
For the next story.
Yeah, so because they're all original works, I'm not going to junk them.
True.
Right? And that artist may have never done anything beyond that, but it's still there in my collection. And sometimes the emerging artists are successful, sometimes they're not. So that's the risk and the chance you have to take.
So you look at today, there's a lot of there's huge growth in the moderns and of course established contemporaries. So would I say, is there a role that private collectors, patrons and business, houses can, play in supporting emerging art?
Yeah, I think they must. I think a lot of the people who collect are collecting just big names, whether they're the moderns or the progressives and things like that. And I hear that from other gallery friends. And there's not enough, let's say, cultivation of contemporary art. So that's what I'm hearing. And I don't know the best way, and I think there's so many contemporary art exhibitions. It takes time for a contemporary artist to become an established artist, maybe 20 years.
Yes.
Right? So you can't just go, I don't know, it's a difficult ecosystem, So some of the works that we've collected with contemporary, they've done well. Some have been okay, and but you have to like the work. So I think when you're buying, you have to like the work. You have to enjoy whether you want to keep it in your personal space or office space. You want to immediately mount it, or you want to build a collection and keep it. And as I said, you might see 10 emerging artists. Maybe only 2 will be successful.
True.
But the pricing is also.
It's also
correct, and it's not as if you're investing so much.
So it's like when you buy a startup stock.
Exactly.
2 startups may do well, and 6 may go down.
And they don't some fail. So it's exactly like that. And I think people go around with this. Who's the next this, and who's the next Hussain, and who's the next. That's not how you collect.
Yeah, I don't think you picked any of your works, the posters, looking at appreciation. Would you say that? No, right? It was based on love and connection.
Yeah, that was a passion. And even contemporary art, you go and you see works, and I actually am drawn to more minimal works, which I enjoy. So they'll be in the collection somehow.
So you received the Padma Shri in 2012, a moment of recognition, and what did that moment mean to you?
I mean, it was very unexpected and I mean, quite rewarding for the type of work that we've done in the hotels and positioned the company. That was in 2012, and I think now 15 years later we've come even further because we've done a very successful IPO. We now have 35 hotels. So actually that was a great recognition. It came quite early, but I think I guess the government wanted to recognize young business leaders. So at that time, so it's great. Maybe has it propelled me further? I don't know. I think the journey has been very rewarding itself. These recognitions are good, but yeah.
No, I think in terms of the hotels, I mean, they have such a distinct personality, and they literally kind of preserve that culture of that space.
Yes,
I feel
thank you.
That's a really big thing. So now my last few questions are really about your advice to young collectors or entrepreneurs who are looking at supporting the arts.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most meaningful place to begin?
To collect.
To collect.
I think first of all you have to decide, okay, fine, I want to spend X amount per year. If you're a young collector, then you have to obviously allocate money. Now that could be 5,000 rupees, it could be 5 lakhs. I don't know, of people's collecting journey. I think you have to see exhibitions, and you have to go to exhibitions. You have to go to the NGA. Maybe you want a crash course in history, go to an NGMA or go to a MAP or something else in Bangalore, or NGMA in Mumbai for that matter, and you see the span of artworks in India. You may like some, you may not like. I think it's a question of getting that knowledge, going to shows. It could be openings. It doesn't have to be openings. Openings are very chaotic.
I think you can see art better on a
yeah,
regular
so I tend to go the day of the opening just before, or I go a couple of days later. I mean, obviously it's nice to meet everybody at an opening, but you can't really engage with the works or get a proper tour or something else. So I think it's a question to see, and then finally to buy what you like. And what you like, it doesn't matter what 20 people in the room are telling you. So it's actually better to see the work on your own.
Yeah, and follow your heart in a way, no?
Yeah, I think so. And then you decide, okay, fine, I want to spend this much, and that's it, and enjoy it. You don't have to buy a name.
Totally.
But if you want to buy names, then you can buy prints.
You can buy
serigraphs. You can buy other things, buy the top drawings, by the top artists, and those are much better priced.
True, agree. In your view, I mean, what does art do to a space that nothing else can?
Well, I live in it and do it all the time, so do you. For me, it's a very important part of finishing a space or being in a space, and I think it engages, and it's, I don't know, just...
It in a way
I can't imagine a space without art. Having said that, my bedroom has not a single piece of art. It has little sculptures and it has lots and lots of books. So that is the art in the thing. No visual clutter, except for the bookshelf, which is huge.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. But you see this is the contrast.
Yeah.
That is, but the books are the art there. That also has a graphic language, it has things, and there are little sculptures in
the middle of those. Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Indian contemporary art and how it's being received or not, globally, and where we stand?
So I think in all aspects of Indian culture, we're seeing a greater assertion of Indian, let's say, soft power. And I think it's started to happen in art. It started to happen in fashion.
Yes, recently.
Certainly, Bollywood and weddings and things like that. So I think that is, as India has become more of a confident nation, that is being celebrated the world over. There was always like very large collections of antiquities and things like that in museums across the world. And that is, I also see that being showcased much more, whether it's at the Met or it's at the British Museum or V&A. There's that fabulous jewelry Cartier thing. So I think it goes back to that whole globalization and India and the world, which started in 1700s actually. maybe earlier, because we had connections with the Roman civilization in the 2nd
Yeah.
century BC. So I think it's also the understanding that India was not like just a footnote. It was a very important part of trade, of culture, of influence. And I think we'll see more of that in the years come. And as you know, India is a growing nation and a young nation, also producing more artists and things like that, that's going to be an interesting ecosystem too.
It is something interesting.
Yeah,
I think the
there's a
next
lot of
decade
work,
will be fun to watch.
whether it's a Kiranadar or the other foundations working across the world. In Singapore, London, you see people now funding exhibitions, not just Indian art, but also other exhibitions. So I think that is beginning to change.
The ecosystem is changing.
Yeah.
So if you had to give one last advice to a young collector, what would that be?
I think certainly to see more art, to enjoy the art, and I think not to get influenced by what everybody else is saying. Do what's in your heart and what you feel about the work.
And maybe not look at just, whether it's a good investment and just...
It's not. If you approach art as an investment, I think that's a completely wrong track.
Yeah. Because we get that question quite often, and it's
so you want to buy an investment, then you have to buy one of those big things if you really want to make a sure bet.
Yeah.
And then again, it's also the quality of the work. So that is also very subjective, and no one can help you with that.
Yeah, today you can't. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation, and actually thank you for bringing so much art into public spaces and making that difference, because I think that's really important. Because one, of course, you collect art, but I think the fact that there's so much art that you bring into your hotels, I'm sure you made a lot of more people, get interested in art and start collecting. So,
I hope so.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for your time.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Gayatri. Pleasure talking to you.
Thanks.